back in 2015, I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast with Rich Roll, who is a triathlete who began his athletic career at the age of 40 after spending 2 decades as a lawyer who was abusing drugs and not exercising. His story was very inspirational to me, and it just so happens that Rich is a vegan. He is on a all plant-based diet and hasn't had meat, I believe, for over a decade. And his performance and his view on life, one of the things that he recommended on the podcast was an app called Headspace, which is a guided meditation app that I tried out right after listening to that podcast about 4 years ago. And looking at Rich as an athlete and following his journey has been inspirational. And taking his recommendation, when I downloaded Headspace and I used it for about a year to a year and a half, brought me tremendous benefits. So with that and his credibility and my own experience to back up some of his recommendations, I decided to go vegan last month, the month of August 2019, just to try it, just to see how I would feel, see if there was any difference, see how I would like the meal prep. I prep all of my meals in one day for the entire week. So I wanted to see if there was any change there. I wanted to see if there was any change in my grocery bill, because previous to last month, I've spent the last 12 to 16 months on a ketogenic diet, and that diet is relatively harsh on my grocery bill, according to my wife. So I wanted to try it out, and I have a month worth of data, both data that I can pull from certain sources, such as the health app that's on my iPhone, and then also an app that I use to track my heart rate variability on a daily basis. And for those of you that don't know what a heart rate variability is, it is a measurement that measures the variability between the beats of each beat of your heart for a specific set of time. So I check my heart rate variability in the morning, where I have my lowest resting heart rate, and the variabilities between each beat is an indicator of how well your nervous system is responding to stress. So in addition to measuring my my pulse and measuring my heart rate, and taking in consideration a survey that follows right after taking my pulse, it develops a score and it benchmarks against previous examinations to see how well I'm recovering from not only from physical exercise, but also psychological stresses as well. I've noticed that there's a correlation between my recovery points taking a dip when I meditate less. And to me, that was a surprise to see that my physical behavior, my training, my diet was the same, but to just tweak that one variable of meditating less and seeing my recovery score change as a result was very telling. So there's a lot of different factors into into how my body has been recovering while using things like heart rate variability. And I just wanted to preface that because it's when I look at the data, when I look at the month of August as a vegan, I think there's more variables at play than simply the diet. So what was the diet for the month of August? The month of August was a plant-based diet, no animal product, and that consists of about a diet that's made up of about 20% protein, versus the ketogenic plan that I was on for about a year to a year and a half before that. It was high fat, low carbohydrate, and that consisted of 20% protein, 5% carbs, and 75% fat. And mostly that fat was saturated fat from coconut oil, olive oil, avocados, and animal meat. So, all in all, as I record this, coming off of the diet, or I'm actually still on the diet. I'm going to ride it out until until September 5th, so that way I can just round out a clean 4 weeks. But I did go through all the month of August, only eating plants, no animal products, and I feel great. I have lost weight, which was not the goal. If you know me, I'm just a skinny person by nature, and I feel like I can use some weight, but I lost weight, and much of it, what I'm left to believe, is a lot of water weight that I shed. Doesn't seem like I lost muscle per se, but I did. I did shrink in the sense of that my muscles aren't as full as they were when I first started. I have the body of a cyclist now. So if you see me in one of those Lance Armstrong suits, you can thank the plants for that. But I feel great. I feel like I have a lot of energy. I have a lot of clarity. I have a lot of the energy is consistent throughout my days, which I'm thankful for. And I'm not so sure if there's been a rapid change in my performance when I look at my workouts. When I look at my workouts for the past month, they've remained pretty much the same. When I look at last month, I worked out 24 times in the past month, and this is coming from the Apple Health Kit data that's on my iPhone. When I look at that activity, and those workouts are relatively short workouts. On average, it's about 24 minutes, and I use an app called Keelo. That's Keelo. And by the way, all the resources and names that I'm going to reference in this podcast can be found at lewislee.net/120 if I can speak right. That's lewislee.net/120. And that's for this episode's number 120. So if you're interested in this, and any of the resources that I call out, go to that link. I'll have the resources in the show notes. But I use a Keelo app, Keelo. It's a high intensity interval training app. It most resembles CrossFit, without the community aspect and without the battle ropes and the huffing and puffing and grunting. So, but that app has been great for me. I've been using it over a year, and my workouts haven't changed as much. When I look at my fitness score and I look at how I'm pacing, Things are progressing, but I'm not so sure that's as a result of the diet as much as it is as the consistency of uh, the workouts that my schedule has allowed me to do. So looking at my heart rate variability, I use an app called HRV for training. That's HRV for the number 4 for training. And that app just uses my phone, my phone's camera lens to track my pulse. And they have so much data and so much research on uh, iPhone being able to track HRV rates as compared to other popular methods such as an Oura ring or a watch or a chest strap. Um, these are all different ways to track your HRV, and using your iPhone's lens with the light that catches your pulse is ranked right up there with the best of the hardware to track your HRV. Um, my HRV remained pretty much the same over the past month. There wasn't a lot of variability there. Um, it says that when I look at my analysis for the past 60 days, it says that I'm coping well with my training. My HRV baseline saw a trivial increase, and it's about at a 7.6. My HR baseline, my heart rate baseline saw a trivial decrease. My normalized HRV saw a trivial increase, and the HRV coefficient variation saw a trivial increase. So, looking at the and I apologize, I said it was in the past 60 days. The data that I'm reviewing is in the past 14 days. So half of the month of August, which means I was well into the vegan diet. Um, it states that I was coping well with my current training program. So no impact there to recovery points. My month average only saw a change of 1.5%, and I feel great. As I mentioned, I feel good. The only thing that I will recommend here is at about August 20th, 20 days into going vegan, I experienced a headache that had been going on for 3 days straight. I felt weak. I felt tired. Um, I felt exhausted. And um, before jumping into a vegan diet, I had listened to a podcast on Joe Rogan where they had Chris Kresher on the podcast debating um, a cardiologist on um, plant-based versus a high-fat diet. And one of the recommendations that he had was to take vitamin B12, which is a vitamin that is mostly found in animal products. And I did not heed that warning. I spent the first 20 days of the experiment without taking vitamin B12, which is a vitamin that allows nutrients to be pulled into your muscles efficiently. I didn't take it, and I think that's why I kind of felt a little crash coming on. I started supplementing with vitamin B12, and in 3 days I felt much, much better. So if you're going to try a plant-based diet, I would recommend considering that. There's different variables that play into that, whether it's height, weight, gender, and genetic makeup. But I would, if I could do it over again, I wouldn't have started off without taking it. One of the other things I think is important here to note during my vegan trial is that I fasted. I had restricted eating throughout every day of the month. So I have a feeding window that is between 6:30 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. And the only reason I chose that window was because my wife likes to have dinner with me, so that's why I've decided to eat around 6:30. But that information, the benefits of fasting, have come to light uh, to me through a longevity specialist, Dr. Rhonda Patrick at foundmyfitness.com. She has a lot of information, whether it's on her website or whether it's on her podcast about fasting. She's also someone who's helped the Zero app in the App Store. That's a fasting tracker that can help you track your feeding periods, if you will, the windows that you have. She typically recommends a window anywhere between 10 to 8 hours. So just eating within a 10 to 8 hour window, and then not grazing after that. And she has a lot of science, not only on her website, but a lot of science that's in that app that I suggest people checking out if they're interested in fasting. Another source of information that I came across in regards to fasting is Dr. David Sinclair. He was on episode 1349 on the Joe Rogan Experience. He specializes in longevity, and he talked about in that podcast how he's came across research of how hunger actually turns on certain genes that help people live longer. So that's pretty fascinating. And then the most intense faster, if that's a term, the most intense faster that I know is Dr. Peter Attia. He's of the Drive podcast, and I believe he's at peterattia.com. I'll have his information in the show notes, but if you check him out, he's known for going on 7-day long fast with water only, and doing resistance training all the while. So he's got a plethora of information. He has a whole landing page of his research and other people's research regarding fasting, which to me, I feel also is a huge variable in how my body has been recovering. I first came across the idea of restricted eating when I was listening to Steve Maxwell, who's a controversial figure in physical health and wellness. But he had mentioned something to me that stuck out and made a lot of sense. He had said that when you get sick, don't eat. He's like, when people get sick, most of the time they lose their appetite. And that is an example of the body telling itself that it needs to reserve its resources to fight off whatever it is that it has to compete with to get you back up to full health. And when you're eating, when you're digesting food, that is a very energy taxing process that your body has to go through, or it has to take something from the outside world and convert it into energy that propels your life forward. That process of digesting, not only intimate but also very energy taxing. So the way I look at it from that perspective is I just consolidate that conversion process to a smaller time period within the day, and I do it at night after I've got all of my work done. And what I've found is that I have um, consistent and authentic energy burning throughout the day. So I say all this to say that I enjoyed the plant-based diet, which to me, my recipes included a lot of soy, a lot of tofu, um, a lot of leafy greens, a lot of agave as my substitute for anything that was like sweet. So to kind of make up for sugar, which I think I'm not sure if sugar is vegan or not, but I tend to stay away from it nonetheless. But I used agave to make up for anything that needed sweet, and then I used plant-based protein to kind of help me out with everything else. In addition to that, apples, fruits, vegetables, bell peppers, things of that nature, is what my diet consisted of. I feel good. I feel great. I know there is such thing as a vegan bodybuilder, so I guess the type of workouts, the high intensity interval training that I've been doing is the culprit as to why I probably look like a biker or a cyclist rather, more than anything else. I feel good. When I look at the data, it doesn't seem like it's anything that's too compelling. Maybe maybe it's that I need more data. I don't have any data on how my gut microbiome has changed, which I'm 100% sure that it has, but I just don't have the data to look at how that's adjusted and how that's impacting me. But when I look at all other things that I do have access to, my workouts, my sleep patterns, my outlook on life, I feel really good. I feel like I'm in a good place. I feel like it's a good diet to have an excuse to stay away from the cake because it has dairy or egg product in it. But when I look at the results and I look at how things are set up when it's very difficult to stay away from animal products, I think in the upcoming month I am going to go back to not only a diet that has meat, but I'm going to go back to a standard diet where it's going to be easier for me when I'm traveling. I'm going to Denver and I'm going to Boston this month. So I'm going to go back to the standard diet of about 40% protein, 30% carbs, 30% fat, which includes animal products. So I guess I'm going to compare that against how I felt on keto, how I felt on plant-based, and go from there. Again, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I know there was a lot of information from a lot of different sources. Please check out lewislee.net /120 if you're interested in getting some of the links and some of the resources when it comes to heart rate variability, fasting, training, and the like. So thank you very much. Have a nice week.